Hi guys, it's Scissors. So I'm using the crappy video camera today, and I'm not going to edit this. I'm just going to do it and put it up because I've been procrastinating way too long. And so yeah, this is going to be a video on runes. I'm going to do two videos on runes, one on the Germanic runes and one on the witches runes, because he didn't specify which ones. He said, or I should tell you who he is. NatureBoy236236 requested that I do a video on Wiccan runes. There's no such thing as a Wiccan rune because Wicca is a really new religion and runes are generally very old. I'm not sure about the witches runes yet because I haven't researched those to do the video yet. So I'm going to do both of these videos to make sure that I cover the ground that he wanted me to. And I have notes in front of me, so if you see me looking down here and not up here, that's why. So I'm going to start with the Germanic runes, and they are pretty much just an ancient Germanic alphabet that was used for writing, divination, and magic, and I will touch more on that later. They're made of straight, rigid lines so that they'd be easier to write into stone, because it's harder to do curvy things if you're writing in stone. If any of you have ever tried doing that, it's a little bit difficult. And when you're reading them, some people do make the mistake of writing the way that most of us write, which is left to right. But when you're reading runes or writing runes, you're supposed to write them from right to left. The story that goes along with the runes is that Odin hung upside down from the world tree, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce that because I don't know how to say the name of it, but he hung upside down from the world tree, impaled by his own spear for 9 days and 9 nights, and at the end of that time the runes appeared below him. So he picked them up and he brought them to mankind, and he taught them to us, and that's where we get the runes from. The Anglo-Saxon Furthark is usually the most known and the most used. It has more letters. The Elder Furthark, which is the original Germanic alphabet, originally had 24 letters and then was reduced to 16 over time. Then the Anglo-Saxons picked it up and they added, again, more letters to compensate for the Anglo-Saxon language, which is Old English. Reading runes, like in divination. Most sets of runes, most sets of runes have a blank rune. It'll be a stone that doesn't have anything on it. That is a really new thing that I believe came from the Book of Runes, which I do own, and I do think it's a good book, although the person from the website that I'm reading from doesn't think so. But anyways, the blank rune today is meant to mean the unknown. However, in the actual sense of the runes being an alphabet, there was no blank rune, because it's just like we don't have a blank letter. You can't write something that isn't there. So in the actual olden times, I guess you could say, it didn't exist. That's a really new thing that people decide to throw in there for our own purposes. To read runes, you don't just simply do a reading for no reason. You have to have a purpose. You have to have something that you're doing the reading for. So usually you ask a question, and then you do your reading either in one of two ways. You can either cast your runes, or you can use a spread, like a tarot spread. And the readings are not absolute. It's just like with any other kind of divination. What you see is not technically what you get. You can always change what you want based on what your reading is. So let's start with casting. casting is one of the more, or it's one of the forms of using runes that I first found, and that's where you either pick out a certain number of stones or you take all of your stones, and they don't have to be stones, but for the sake of this video we'll call them stones, and you throw them down onto a white cloth. And it doesn't have to be white, but it's usually white. And then the ones that are facing up you read, and the ones that are facing down you either ignore or use those kind of like an inverted tarot card, where you read it almost in opposite meaning. And in casting there are different ways that you can interpret things, or like the cloth can be plain, it can have nothing on it, or it can be separated into sections for like the past, present, the future, or it can be separated into different houses. Depends on what your preferences are. In a spread, you do pretty much what you do with a tarot spread, and you would probably use a tarot spread, where you take a bag and it has your runes in it, and you're thinking of your question, and you shuffle around the runes and you pull them out one at a time and place them in their spot on the spread, face down, and then you flip them over one at a time and interpret their meanings. And it's up to the person doing the reading to decide what those runes mean in the context of their question, because they're really vague. So, and then we're going to move on to magic, because that's one of the things that fewer people know about, is that you can use runes in magic. I first came across this in Silver Raven Wolf's book. I don't remember the name of the book. It's a big red one, because I don't use that book anymore. But runes in magic, you can. Well, each rune is associated with a letter, yes, and also a meaning, and a power. Each rune has power. So, and that power is the same as the meaning that you would use in a reading. And I'm not going to go over what the meanings are for each individual one, because that would take up too much time. But to use a rune in magic, you could write it on a piece of paper, and that could be your spell. You just write a certain rune on a piece of paper and burn it, or bury it, or whatever. You can turn it into an amulet or talisman. You can use them to incorporate with other spells, and then you can also use combined runes, where you will take one rune and you will add it on to another. So it's like if you were to take fail, which is like that, you could add uruts onto the side of it, so that they almost like share a line. And that is taking the powers of two runes and putting them together. Can't think of anything else except writing with runes. And I'm going to talk about my experience with runes. I don't know how much time. 8 minutes. Wow. So I gotta go fast. I first came across the runes in Appendix B of my copy of The Hobbit by John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. And he used the runic alphabet as the alphabet for the dwarves in Middle-earth. So I learned how to write in runes. I learned it in a day. It's not very difficult. And what most people who write in runes don't realize is that each rune holds power, so you're infusing what you're writing with that power. That's another way that you can use runes in magic, and I am running out of time, so I have to close this up. That's pretty much everything I have to say about runes, and I'm going to go do another rune video now about the witches' runes. So I hope that this video was sufficient, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day. Blessed be.